For a long time, the biggest podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, reigned in top rankings in the podcasting industry. The podcast king, however, has suddenly been dethroned by an actual member of the monarchy. Archetypes has surpassed JRE to become the #1 podcast on Spotify in the United States, Canada, Australia, and of course, the United Kingdom. And in this video, we'll explain how. First things first, Meghan Markle and Joe have a complicated history. Rogan sat down with the former British-American CIA operative in a January 2020 edition of his podcast. During the show, the two discussed Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's Megxit from the British royal family. Joe Rogan made fun of the pair by changing his accent to seem like Queen Elizabeth II and said that little American hussy has ruined Prince Harry and is going to transform him into a Kardashian. Yikes, Joe, that really wasn't in good taste. He then issued a public apology after all of his podcast episodes were mysteriously deleted. We wonder how that happened. Must have been the wind. But misogyny aside, there is a pretty legit critique here. Despite constantly platforming alt-right fascist whistleblowers on his podcast, Joe for the longest time has seen himself as a fairly liberal voice for the working class. What he said was still inexcusable, but that shouldn't stop us from holding the couple accountable for a few things. The prince likes self-righteously lecturing us all about the crucial need to reduce our carbon footprint and save the planet while he uses his own jet as we would use public transportation, while the Duke and Duchess of Sussex appealed to the public to think about poverty on their Twitter handles. On the same day, Meghan Markle hosted a $500,000 baby shower in New York and traveled back to London on George Clooney's plane. Meghan Markle and her husband, Britain's very own Prince Harry, agreed to a 3-year podcast deal with Spotify for $15 million to $18 million in December 2020. Archetypes, the first podcast to premiere as part of the exclusive partnership, intends to examine the labels that try to keep women back. In addition to the Spotify deal, the couple, who are beginning to function outside of the royal family, have committed to a variety of other commercial and streaming initiatives. Maybe this isn't just about starting a podcast. It's a very elaborate corporate-backed PR campaign. Diabolical. The couple has been hard at work lately, constantly trying to revamp their public image, erasing their privileged roots and presenting themselves as one of the people. And a talk show format is the perfect place to do this. You remember Oprah's interview, right? That really did numbers. Podcasts and talk shows are all targeted at a very specific group of people, and that group, coincidentally, also makes up the majority of the public. It would be stupid not to use the platforms they use to candidly connect with them in an attempt to close a very steep and problematic class difference that wouldn't be very good for the couple's new angle. Also, Prince Harry was reportedly meant to be a part of wife Markle's podcast too, but he withdrew at the very last minute due to concerns that it would embarrass his family. Sounds kind of odd, don't you think? So what's the podcast like anyway? According to Meghan, the 12-part series called Archetypes, a play on the name of the couple's oldest child, Archie, would explore the female experience. Serena Williams enters as Archetypes' first guest, and she and Markle discuss the issues that women face in the workplace. Markle will interview singer Mariah Carey in the second episode of Archetypes, which is set to air next week. Now, the angle is of course a feminist one, but it's very much limited to glass ceiling restrictions faced by a relatively marginal group of people. What we would like to see is Meghan talk about the issues faced by women that are still not even allowed entry into the public sphere. Maybe even have guests over from some of Britain's former colonies, or have real feminist academics and academics on instead of celebrities that the public will obviously tune in to listen to. Of course, this isn't very likely, as guests like these would surely affect Archetypes' rankings. After all, corporate interest does come before goodwill and kindness. People tune into these podcasts because of the stars. The opulence is what draws you to them. You want to see how different these people really are from you. So dropping a harsh reality check when people just want to take their minds off of their problems by finding them being vocalized through celebrities wouldn't really be in a producer's best interests. Alison Yarrow is by far the only guest we're looking forward to making an appearance on the show, since she could actually lead a constructive discussion that is necessary for today's media climate. But will Archetypes be able to hold its #1 spot? However, Markle has a star-studded guest list lined up for the rest of her podcast, so Archetypes could potentially give the Joe Rogan Experience a run for its money and permanently usurp Rogan. Honestly, time will tell. And until then, Joe doesn't really seem too bothered by all of this. This isn't the first time he lost his top spot. Banter with Sapnap and Carl Jacobs, a gaming podcast, overtook Rogan in September 2021, but Rogan quickly regained the top place a week or two later. later. Then in May of this year, an episode of the fictional podcast Batman Unburied debuted at number 1 on the US Spotify chart, a position Rogan quickly reclaimed. Is Joe really unfazed this time too? Rogan took to Instagram to share the official House of the Dragon poster and revealed that he had just watched episode 1. HBO nailed it again, he said in the caption. I just finished watching the first episode of House of the Dragon. It reminds me of old school Game of Thrones, which was one of my favorite shows ever. I hope this show lasts 10 years. Joe posted this on the same day that Archetypes dethroned his podcast at the top of the Spotify chart. Of course, he isn't letting out a peep against Markle. You already know what happened the last time he did that. But it could also be that maybe he just doesn't care. Who knows, but we have a feeling that we're going to find out soon. Now, moving on to other news. First off, Dateline has something in store for true crime buffs. True crime is one of the most popular podcast content categories, and now one of the genre's pioneers, NBC's Dateline, is hoping to cash in. On Monday, NBC will debut Dateline Premium, a new subscription service on Apple Podcasts that will provide ad-free access to over 400 hours of unique audio content. After a 7-day free trial, the subscription will cost $2.99 per month or $29.99 per year. Dateline Premium subscribers will also receive additional monthly episodes, the first of which will be available on September 1st. Subscribers will also be able to listen to new Dateline podcasts before anybody else, including the upcoming Internal Affairs 6-episode series based on Dateline correspondent Josh Mankiewicz's research into a tragic love affair in a northern Colorado police department. The series will be accessible to Dateline Premium subscribers starting September 13th, before being freely available on September 20th. And about cashing in, Twitter has its ears perked up after hearing that. Twitter has officially entered the podcast space. Twitter Spaces is unveiling a beta that incorporates podcasts, allowing users to listen to whole broadcasts through tailored playlists, depending on their interests. Stations and topic-based playlists, mixing podcast episodes collected from RSS with Twitter's social audio events and recordings, will be available under the revamped Spaces tab. It's actually pretty similar to a Pandora station, but for spoken word, and is somewhat different from the a la carte podcast listening that consumers are used to on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. The option with live and future slots is still available farther down the page. The test will be rolled out to a random set of people worldwide, first just in English. The more people that listen, the more personalized the radio stations will become. But Twitter isn't exactly planning on starting from scratch. To build the playlist, the company relies on what it already knows about its users' taste. It will also take into account the interests of individuals that those users follow. If we're being real here, podcast discovery is notoriously abysmal, with options ranging from top 100 charts to hand-picked app picks, or, more often than not, word of mouth. So yet, no platform has really cracked it. It's easy to picture the promotional potential of being able to share and listen to podcasts in the same app though, but it's still a long way off. The beta test does not support clipping, and listening can only be done in the Spaces tab, not on the timeline. Having said that, Spaces has a clipping capability that might be extended to podcasts in the future. All things considered, Twitter and podcasts may be a good match. Twitter Spaces, which debuted in 2020 on the heels of Clubhouse's viral popularity, provides the platform an early footing in audio. We can't tell when consumers may expect an official launch, but how people respond to the test will impact the final form of the service. If you are one of the chosen guinea pigs, please feel free to hit us up to share your experience. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think JRE will be able to retake its throne? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.